Nobody in that chandelier-lit restaurant expected the billionaire at table 7 to go pale. But the moment Grant Whitaker looked up from his $50 million contract, he froze, because the pregnant waitress wobbling under a tray of glasses was his ex-wife. Grant had chosen the Sterling Room, a high-end spot where the steaks cost more than most people's weekly groceries. His investors were already seated. Pens were uncapped. The deal that would put his company on every headline was seconds away from being signed. Then a soft voice cut through the clink of silverware. "Excuse me, coming through." Grant's eyes locked onto the woman squeezing between tables. Elena Brooks' hair pulled back, cheeks hollow, moving carefully like every step hurt. Her belly sat high, unmistakable, 8 months pregnant, maybe more. She tried to hide the tremble in her hands, but the tray rattled anyway. A manager in a tight suit. Derek Sloan snatched a napkin off a chair and barked loud enough for half the room to hear, "If you can't keep up, you're gone." Pregnant or not. Elena flinched, not dramatic, just defeated. Grant stood so hard his chair scraped the marble floor. His partners stared. The room went quiet. "Elena," he said, like the name tasted like old wounds. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She only whispered, "Please, don't do this here." And that's when Grant noticed the way she shielded her stomach like she was protecting something from him. His voice dropped to a razor-thin line. "Is that baby mine?" Elena's eyes flicked to the dining room people pretending not to stare, phones half lifted under linen napkins. She swallowed hard, forcing her face into something flat and careful. "Grant," she said, voice barely above a breath, "don't." But he couldn't stop. Not after years of replaying the same scene like a bruise you keep pressing just to feel something. Because this wasn't how it ended. Not in his memory. In his memory, Elena stood in their kitchen with a suitcase by the door, her hands shaking as she slid divorce papers across the granite like she was sliding a knife. "I'm leaving," she'd said, for who Grant's laugh had come out sharp ugly. "Tell me I'm wrong." She looked past him, never into his eyes, and said the words that burned the deepest. "There's someone else. From Europe. He's offering me a life you never will." Grant remembered the way his chest locked up, the way he gripped the counter until his knuckles went white. "You're lying," he'd whispered. "I'm not." Her voice had cracked like glass. "Please sign." He signed. Not because he believed her, because he wanted her to look at him. To fight. To stay. She didn't. She walked out, and the door clicked shut with a sound that rewired his whole world. After that, Grant became the man people feared, the billionaire who didn't blink, didn't forgive, didn't lose. He buried himself in deals and numbers because numbers don't betray you. And every time he saw a couple laughing in public, he'd feel that old humiliation crawl up his throat. Now in the back of the Sterling Room, Elena stood inches away, pregnant, exhausted, and real. Grant's voice dropped rougher than he intended. "You told me you found someone else." Elena's jaw tightened. She looked like she was holding back a wave with her teeth. "I did what I had to do," she said. "That's not an answer." Her hand drifted to her belly again, instinctive, protective. And for the first time, Grant saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of him yelling, fear of the truth. She lifted her chin, forcing the lie out like it hurt to breathe. "It's not yours," Elena said. And Grant didn't believe her for a second. Elena turned to leave, but Derek Sloan was already there, blocking the hallway like a bouncer in a designer suit. He didn't lower his voice this time. He raised it. "Well, well," Derek sneered, loud enough for nearby tables to catch every word. "Look who decided to cause a scene. You think sympathy pays the bills? Get back to work. Or clock out and don't come back." Elena's shoulders tightened. She kept her hands near her belly, trying to breathe through it, trying to stay small. "I'm doing my job," she said, steady. But the tremor in her fingers betrayed her. Derek flicked his gaze to her stomach like it offended him. "Your job. You can barely carry a tray. One mistake and someone sues. Then what? You think I'm risking my restaurant because you made choices." A couple at the bar glanced away. A fork clinked against a plate. The room pretended nothing was happening the way people do when the truth gets ugly. Elena took a step back. Her heel caught the edge of a service mat. The tray tilted, glasses sliding. Grant moved before he thought. His hand shot out, catching the tray like it weighed nothing. The glasses stopped just short of crashing. He set it down on a side table with surgical calm, then turned to Derek with a look that made the air feel thinner. "Say that again," Grant said quietly. Derek blinked, recognizing him fully now. His smirk faltered. "Mr. Whitaker, this is an employee matter." Grant stepped closer. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. "You're humiliating a pregnant woman in front of paying guests," he said. "In my presence." Derek tried to laugh it off, but it came out wrong. "She's unreliable. Grant cut him off with a small, sharp gesture. "What's your name?" "Derek Sloan." Grant nodded once, like he'd just filed a fact away. Then he looked past Derek toward the dining room, toward his waiting investors, toward the contract sitting untouched on crisp white linen. "You have two choices," Grant said. "You can apologize to Elena. Right now. Or you can explain to your owner why I'm about to make this place a very expensive memory." Elena's eyes widened. She grabbed Grant's sleeve, whispering like a warning. "Grant, don't please." But Grant didn't look at her. He didn't look away from Derek, because something inside him had snapped, and it wasn't the kind that bends back. Elena's fingers slipped off Grant's sleeve like she'd touched fire. She spun toward the back exit, pushing through the swinging kitchen door past sizzling pans, shouted orders, and the sharp smell of grease until she burst into the narrow alley behind the Sterling room. Cold air hit her face. The city noise dropped to a distant hum. She thought she could disappear. She was wrong. Grant followed fast, controlled footsteps echoing off brick. "Elena, stop," he called. But she kept moving, one hand on her belly, the other bracing against the wall when her breathing snagged. He caught up near the dumpster, blocking her path without touching her. Up close, he could see everything she'd tried to hide under restaurant lighting. The bruised exhaustion under her eyes, the cracked skin on her hands, the way she stood like her back was constantly on the edge of breaking. "Don't come closer," Elena warned, voice shaking. Grant's jaw clenched. "You don't get to run anymore." She let out a bitter laugh that didn't sound like laughter at all. "I didn't run. I survived." Grant's eyes dropped just for a second to the curve of her stomach, then back to her face, hard and pleading at the same time. "Tell me the truth," he said, "right here. No audience, no excuses." His voice lowered, razor thin. "Is that baby mine?" Elena's throat bobbed. For a heartbeat, she looked like she might crumble, like the weight of one honest sentence would crush her. Then she did what she'd learned to do best. She built a wall. Her chin lifted. Her eyes went flat. "No," she said quickly. Too quickly. "It's not yours." Grant didn't move, but something in him shifted like a door locking. "You expect me to believe you just met someone, got pregnant, and ended up scrubbing tables?" he asked, each word clipped. "You expect me to believe you didn't even look for me once?" Elena's lips pressed tight. She stared past him toward the streetlights, blinking like she was fighting back pain. "Believe whatever makes it easier," she whispered. Grant stepped closer, just enough that she had to look at him. "I'm not leaving this alley until I know," he said. "And if you keep lying, Elena, I'm going to dig up the truth myself." Grant let Elena's no hang in the cold air like a bad joke nobody laughed at. Then he did something scarier than yelling. He got calm. "Fine," he said, voice, even eyes still locked on hers. "You don't want to tell me, you won't have to." Elena's breath caught. "Grant, please, just let it go." He stepped back. Not because he was giving up, because he was shifting gears. "You're shaking," he said, noticing the way her fingers clutched her belly like a life raft. "You shouldn't even be standing in an alley." His gaze slid to her cracked hands, the chemical burn lines along her knuckles. His jaw tightened. "Who did this to you?" "No one." The lie was automatic. Grant nodded once, like he expected that answer. Then he pulled out his phone. Elena's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" Grant didn't look away from the screen. "Ending this." He tapped a name and lifted the phone to his ear. One ring, two. A voice answered, sharp and loyal. "Rod, sorry. Miles Carter here." Grant's tone turned surgical. "Miles, I need everything on Elena Brooks for the last 9 months. Where she's lived, who she's met, payments, threats, anything that smells wrong." Miles didn't hesitate. "Understood." How fast? Now, Grant said. And I want a file on Derek Sloan, manager at the Sterling Room. Employment history, complaints, lawsuits. I'm about to remove him from polite society. Elena grabbed Grant's wrist. Stop! You don't understand what you're waking up. Grant finally looked at her. Really looked. I understand you're protecting someone, he said softly. And it's not the guy you claimed knocked you up. He ended the call, slid the phone into his pocket, and turned back toward the glowing restaurant sign. Inside the contract waited. The investors waited. Derek waited, thinking he'd won. Grant's mouth didn't smile, but his eyes did something colder. I'm going to buy this place, he said. And when I do, nobody talks to you like that again. Elena's voice cracked. Grant, don't! But he was already walking coat-swinging footsteps steady, not chasing her anymore, chasing the truth. Grant didn't even make it back to the investors before his phone buzzed once then again, like the truth was sprinting to catch him. He stepped into a quiet side corridor near the restrooms, marble walls muffling the restaurant noise. He answered. Miles, he said. On the other end, Miles Carter sounded different, tight-focused. I pulled what I could fast. Grant. She never left the city. Grant's throat went dry. What do you mean? I mean, there's no European guy. No passport stamps. No travel records. Nothing. For the last 9 months, Elena Brooks has been living in a rundown studio on the edge of town, about 200 square feet, leaky ceiling, no heat half the time. Grant stared at the wall like it might crack open. Miles continued, voice low. She's been moving money, small transfers at first, then bigger. Always to the same 2 names, Victor Hale and Mason Crow. Grant's hand clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. Those names weren't strangers. They were old ghosts, men who'd tried to take his company years ago and swore they'd make him pay. What did they want? Grant asked, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. Control, Miles said. Or a scalp. I found messages, burner numbers, threats. They told her if she didn't leave you, if she didn't make you sign the divorce, they'd frame you, put you in prison. Maybe worse. Grant's stomach dropped. And Elena, he forced out. Miles exhaled. She sold her wedding ring, pawned the necklace your mother gave her, took cleaning jobs under the table, worked double shifts on swollen ankles, all to keep them paid off and keep you safe. Grant closed his eyes. Behind them, the restaurant hummed music, laughter, expensive wine like a different planet. Miles's voice softened. Grant, she didn't betray you. She took the hit for you. Grant opened his eyes, and for the first time that night, the rage in them wasn't aimed at Elena. It was aimed at the men who made her choose the lie. Grant didn't call Elena. He ran, through the dining room, past the stunned investors, past Derek Sloan's frozen face. He shoved open the back door and hit the alley like it was a battlefield. Elena, he shouted. No answer. Then he saw her folded near the brick wall, one knee down, palm pressed to her belly, like she was trying to hold herself together. Her skin looked waxy under the security light. Sweat beaded at her hairline even in the cold. Elena. Hey, look at me. Grant crouched beside her, careful hands hovering. Talk to me. She tried. A thin sound came out. Her eyes rolled for a second, then snapped back with panic. My head, she whispered. It's pounding. I can't. She swallowed, gagging like nausea was rising fast. I can't see right. Grant's blood turned to ice. He remembered a doctor once mentioning warning signs. Too late. Too dangerous. The words came back like a siren. Your ankles, he said, noticing how swollen they were, how her fingers looked puffed. How long has this been happening? Elena's mouth trembled. Just finish your deal, she breathed, like she still believed her suffering was something she had to hide. Please, don't make it worse. Grant pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. Pregnant woman about 8 months, he snapped into the line. She's dizzy, severe headache, vision issues now. We're behind the Sterling Room on Westbridge. Elena's body tensed, then sagged. Grant, she whispered, voice breaking. If they find out. If Victor and Mason... Stop, Grant said, fierce and low. You're not carrying this alone anymore. Sirens cut through the night. At the hospital, fluorescent lights washed Elena's face pale. Nurses moved fast. A doctor leaned in, voice sharp. "Blood pressure is dangerously high. This looks like severe preeclampsia." Grant stood there helpless as they wheeled her away. A nurse glanced back at him. "Sir, are you the father?" Grant swallowed hard, eyes fixed on Elena disappearing through double doors. "I should have been," he said. And it hit him like a punch because now both of them were fighting for their lives. The double doors slammed shut, and Grant Whitaker was left in the hallway with nothing but the echo of Elena's breathing in his ears. A doctor in scrubs marched up like he'd been waiting for someone to blame. "Are you family?" Grant's mouth opened. No sound. The doctor didn't soften. "She's in severe preeclampsia. Her blood pressure is dangerously high. We're prepping an emergency C-section. If we don't move fast, we could lose both." Grant felt the world tilt. She didn't tell anyone, he said like an apology, and a confession tangled together. A nurse stepped in, eyes sharp. 8 months pregnant, working on her feet, underfed, stressed. "Sir, where have you been?" That one hit harder than any punch. Grant followed them to the edge of the operating wing, stopped by a red line on the floor, like it was a border he didn't deserve to cross. Through a glass panel, he caught a glimpse of Elena on the gurney, small under bright lights, hair damp, lips pale. Her hands were outstretched as nurses hooked up IV lines, and that's when he saw it clearly. The skin on her knuckles raw, cracked, stained chemical burns from cheap cleaners, the kind that don't come from one bad shift, the kind that come from months of survival. Elena turned her head, eyes unfocused, and still, she searched the room like she was looking for him. Grant pressed his palm to the glass. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm right here. You don't have to be brave anymore." The doctor's voice cut back in. "Sir, we need consent forms. And you need to understand something, this baby might come early. NICU early." Grant grabbed the pen with shaking fingers, signing like his name could hold them together. And in that moment he made a silent promise that felt like a vow carved into bone. Victor Hale and Mason Crow weren't just going to pay. They were going to lose everything. The baby arrived under a clock that wouldn't stop screaming. Minutes felt like hours. Then the doors burst open and a nurse stepped into the hallway, eyes locked on Grant. "Sir," she said, breathing fast, "we have a boy. He's early. He's tiny. But he's fighting." Grant's knees almost gave out. Relief hit first hot, dizzying, then reality followed right behind it. Because Elena wasn't out yet. "How's she doing?" he asked, voice raw. The nurse hesitated just long enough to scare him. "She's stable. For now." The doctor's still with her. Grant nodded like he understood, but his hands were shaking. He pressed his forehead to the wall, swallowing a sound that wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite a prayer. Then his phone vibrated. "Miles Carter," Grant answered without looking at the screen. "Tell me you've got them." "I do," Miles said. "Locations, burner numbers, bank trails, threat messages, and we've already looped in the right people quietly." Grant stared through the NICU window as they wheeled his son in, no bigger than a loaf of bread covered in wires, chest fluttering like a hummingbird. The monitor beeped in steady, stubborn rhythm. Grant's voice dropped to steel. "Victor Hale and Mason Crow don't get another day to breathe easy. They won't." Miles replied. "Warrants are moving. And Derek Sloan, there are complaints going back years. We're packaging that too." Grant's jaw tightened. "Good. No deals, no payoffs, no misunderstanding. I want courtrooms, handcuffs, headlines." A doctor approached, then pulling down his mask. "Mr. Whitaker, you can see your wife in recovery soon." My ex-wife, Grant, corrected automatically, then stopped. The word felt wrong now. Too small. Too late. He looked at the NICU again, at the fragile life Elena had protected with her own body. "Not for long," he murmured, and as Grant followed the doctor down the corridor, one thought burned through every step. This time Elena wasn't the one who would be sacrificed. This time the people who hunted them were going to learn what it meant to be hunted. By dawn, the hunt wasn't a metaphor anymore. It had a case number. Grant Whitaker stood in the hospital parking lot with the cold chewing through his suit phone pressed to his ear, while the city woke up like nothing had happened. Inside, Elena was in recovery. His son was in the NICU. And somewhere out there, Victor Hale and Mason Crow were probably still telling themselves they were untouchable. Miles Carter's voice came through clean and sharp. The package is in. Threat texts, bank transfers, burner pings, witness statements. We handed it to the task force and the DA's office. Grant stared at his own reflection in the black glass of his car window. His eyes looked older, harder. I want them taken in today. They're moving, Miles said. And Grant, there's more. We found a paper trail tying them to attempted extortion and coercion. It's not just you. They've done this before. Grant's jaw flexed. He didn't celebrate. He didn't gloat. He just breathed once, so slow like a man trying not to fall apart. Across the lot, 2 unmarked vehicles rolled in. No sirens, no show. Just doors opening, officers stepping out with folders and purpose. Grant walked back inside the hospital and stopped at Elena's room. She was pale hair, damp eyes, barely open, but she turned her head when she felt him. Grant, she whispered, scared like the truth might still punish her. He moved to her bedside and took her burned hand gently, like it was something sacred. They're not coming for you anymore, he said. Victor and Mason, it's over. Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes, quiet and exhausted. I didn't want you to get hurt. I know, he said, voice cracking. And that's why I'm done letting you pay the price alone. In the hallway, Grant's phone buzzed again. One text from Miles. They're in custody. Grant closed his eyes just for a second, then leaned down and whispered to Elena. We're going to bring our boy home. Quick note. I can continue matching details even more tightly, but the original uploaded content file I would quote our verify from is currently showing as expired on my side. If you re-upload it, I can align every beat with the exact source text. 3 days later, the NICU became Grant Whitaker's new boardroom. Not the kind with leather chairs and skyline views. This one smelled like hand sanitizer and warmed plastic. Monitors beeped. Nurses moved like clockwork. And behind the glass, his newborn son lay in an incubator barely 4 pounds, his tiny chest rising and falling like it was practicing for life. Elena stood beside Grant, still weak, one arm wrapped around herself under a thin hospital blanket. Her eyes never left the baby. I named him Evan, she whispered. I didn't think you'd ever want to know him. Grant swallowed throat tight. I want to know every second I missed. A nurse walked by, pausing to adjust a tube with the gentlest hands Grant had ever seen. He watched her move to the next incubator. Another family, another fight, and something inside him shifted. Money suddenly felt useless if it couldn't change this. He turned to Miles Carter that afternoon, voice low but firm. I want this NICU upgraded. Today. Not a press release, not a gala, real equipment, more staff. Whatever they say they need, make it happen. Miles blinked. Grant, that's a big lift. Grant's stare didn't waver. So is keeping a baby alive at 4 pounds. Do it. By the end of the week, new monitors arrived. The hospital got additional respiratory support equipment. A fund was set up so families wouldn't have to choose between gas money and visiting hours. Elena found him one night in the hallway, sitting on a bench like a man finally out of strength. You didn't have to do all this, she said softly. Grant looked up, eyes shining. Yes, he said, I did. Because you carried the fear. You carried the pain. You carried him. He reached for her burned hand again, careful. Now I carry us. And for the first time in a long time, Elena didn't flinch. She leaned in, and she let him. A month later, the first time baby Evan Whitaker finally breathed without a machine. Grant didn't throw a party. He didn't call reporters. He just stood in the NICU doorway, eyes wet, whispering, "That's my boy," like it was the first honest sentence he'd spoken in years. Elena was getting stronger. 2 slow walks down the hospital corridor, hair pulled back, still healing. One afternoon, Grant brought her outside and pointed across the street. The old Sterling Room sign was gone. In its place, Elena's table. Simple letters, warm lighting, the kind of place that didn't feel like a showroom for rich people anymore. Elena stared confused. You Bought it, Grant nodded. And I changed it. No more humiliation. No more fear. Everyone gets treated like a human being, especially the ones carrying the heaviest loads. She blinked fast, trying not to cry. Why name it after me? Because you were the real backbone, Grant said. You saved me, even when I didn't deserve it. Don't judge someone's story by the scene you walk into. Sometimes the person who looks fine is falling apart. Sometimes the one who seems cold is drowning in regret. Compassion isn't weakness. It's the strongest choice you can make, especially later in life, when you've learned how fast everything can change. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever misunderstood someone you loved until the truth hit you hard? Drop your story in the comments. And if this moved something in you, subscribe, because these are the kinds of stories that remind us it's never too late to make things right.